I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Rain, shine, or laryngitis. That's how we bring you the Star Wars podcast today. I'm your host, Carter, and I have a case of laryngitis. My throat really hurts, and so my voice sounds a little different, but that's not going to stop us from bringing you this very, very special episode of the Star Wars Station. We are super excited to dive into this because today we have got a really special guest that we cannot wait to interview, and we know that you guys are going to enjoy it because you're listening to the Star Wars Station, and it's Star Wars Reading Month. And this has something to directly do with Star Wars reading. And so we're really, really excited to hop on over into that. But I would be remiss if I did not include my colleague, the reading Rhodian, Colin Archer.
Man, what a capstone for the month for this reading thing. It is beyond cool what we get to do. We're interviewing Marc Thompson. Man, it's beyond. Can you imagine? How did we get this opportunity?
It's really, I couldn't believe that we got to talk to Marc. Couldn't believe that he was willing to come on and to talk to us about what it's like to make a Star Wars audiobook, what it's like to produce a Star Wars audiobook, his journey as a voice actor, his journey as a man of faith. I mean, we have a lot to talk about. This is a super serious interview that we get into.
It's easy. We have to sell this. I mean, it's such a great interview. He's such a great guy. What he contributes to Star Wars is just as good, in my opinion. I mean, obviously he's not George Lucas, right? But I mean, he's up there with the big. He's one of the big guns of Star Wars. Is my point, right? I mean, you listen to an audiobook, Star Wars, 99% chance you're listening to something he's done.
Absolutely. I mean, so many people have heard his version of Han Solo. They've heard his version of Anakin and Luke Skywalker.
He did a couple of voices for us, and oh my gosh, about knocked me out of my chair.
Yeah, it was a privilege to get to interview Marc, and so, Colin, I think we'll just head right on into it. And guys, here's our interview with Marc Thompson. So today, joining us here on the Star Wars Station Communication is a very, very special guest. With us is the always eloquent Marc Thompson. For those of you listening who may not have heard of Marc Thompson, he is an American voice actor from Webster, New York, and he has performed in numerous TV shows and video games. He's been in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which was a childhood favorite of mine, Transformers, Cyberverse, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Astonishing X-Men. But most importantly, the reason we're talking to him today on Star Wars Station is Marc is a member of a really unique, really special group that has had the privilege to narrate multiple Star Wars audiobooks.
Yeah, Marc has narrated dozens of them. I just finished the Thrawn trilogy myself, and gosh, it's amazing. Numerous Entries of the High Republic series. Have you listened to any of those? I'm on the way to listen to the High Republic ones. Legacy of the Force series, Fate of the Jedi series, and many others. Marc, it's really our privilege to have you join us here today. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. We couldn't wait to have you on. We've told our listeners, we've told our friends, we've told our family, we're going to have the guy who does Star Wars audiobooks on our podcast. And everyone's like, that is awesome. So we are super excited.
Yeah, I'm so enthralled and engaged listening to these books the way you do it. It's so fun.
Oh, thank you so much. I really love doing them. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So it's like probably the thing on my resume that I'm most proud of is
good
that I get to do those. So
yeah, that's great. Because I knew you were such a big Star Wars fan, and you have to read these books all the time, obviously. Do you have a favorite Star Wars book?
Oh man. I always feel like it's like, they're all my children. I can't choose one. Like it's just because they really are though. Like all of them have different things that I love about them and different, like I love getting to do Thrawn just because of how important he was to the legacy of Star Wars. I felt a huge honor to get to do that. And I feel like Timothy Zahn is so amazingly talented at like, you know, unraveling the mystery and kind of laying out the battlefield so that you can totally see what's going on. And somehow he always gets me where I don't know what Thrawn's going to do until the reveal. And I'm like, you know, like you would think after reading so many, it's like, oh, okay, I get what's happening. But like there's something about the way he writes and the detail and the minutia and the attention to detail that I get so wrapped up in it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how do you do that?
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah. I feel the same way.
Yeah. And then, you know, there's been some great, I'm a huge Jedi fan. So like Dark Disciples by Christy Golden's an amazing book, and just kind of seeing Asajj, you know, Ventress and getting to know that other side of her was really interesting. I love the High Republic right now, like all the stuff with the High Republic Jedi and just all the ways that they perceive the Force, and then getting to do the Legacy of the Force and the Fate of the Jedi books were amazing for me, because I'm you know, just to be able to have more Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Leia stories was so much fun. So I know that's a cop out of an answer, but
No.
I really do love them all.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So, what was your first introduction to Star Wars? Was it movie, book?
Oh
What was
yeah.
it?
Yeah. Like I was born in 75. So like I'm at the sweet spot, like where, you know, I was too young to see New Hope in the theaters. But it's one of those things where I feel like the action figures, I guess probably the action figures may have been my first introduction. I don't know, like what I was getting it when I was 2, but it's just, I feel like it's always been there. I feel like it's always been a part of my life. And, you know,
You still have some of those action figures?
I don't, I know. And it's like a major source of contention, but I hope to buy some again.
Yeah. You know, you were mentioning how you really enjoyed doing Legacy of the Force and how you really enjoyed doing Fate of the Jedi. And I think you do a phenomenal job on all the Star Wars characters, but I want to say that I think that your Han Solo is like, I mean, you sound exactly like Harrison Ford to me. I think. And so, do you have a favorite character that you enjoy doing?
Han's really fun. Like, you know, anytime I'm like, punch it, Chewie, come on. You know, like it's really
Oh
fun
my
to
gosh.
get into
It's
that.
Chills.
It's uncanny.
But my all-time favorite, just because he's my favorite character, is Yoda. Like, and anytime I get to do anything with Yoda, it's like scary because I'm trying to live up to Frank Oz, but it's also just total dream come true moments of getting to do scenes with Yoda, because he's just amazing to me, and I just I love everything about him and what he represents, and you know, so
that's great. Thank you for doing that Han Solo. Like I said, chills. So have there been any difficult characters like from a voice acting perspective, or took lots of practice to do, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, like some of the aliens, especially some of the aliens in the Thrawn books, have been particularly challenging, just because like they're described as like these, like, you know, rippling flesh and like, you know, deep scratchy things. And so I kind of do it to myself, because I try to, like, you know, come up with something, but some of them, you know, it takes like 4 or 5 takes to kind of warm up into it. And then
I remember in the first book of the Thrawn trilogy, there was a Wookiee who spoke basic. That really struck me.
Yeah, that was an interesting experiment. I don't know if it was more Scooby-Doo or if
you
it
did
sounded
great.
legit.
You did great. I liked it. It was very immersive. Yeah.
So, you know, you're talking about how difficult it is to do these voices, but how did you get into voice acting in the first place?
Well, I was pretty early on, figured out that I was kind of a theater kid, and, you know, I wasn't super athletic. I wasn't super smart, but I had some great teachers that really encouraged me to, like, you know, try out for the school play, or why don't you do the speech and debate team? And, like, you know, Mr. Putnam and Miss Hofstetter and Miss Ham and Mr. Frost, like they really like totally nurtured me and encouraged me, and gave me all these opportunities to kind of learn that. And I fell in love with it pretty early on. And my mom was very supportive of it and went out and found me improv classes and acting classes at a very young age. And kind of just, so that was kind of my thing. And it was a bit of a risk because, I ended up going to college for it. And I originally didn't think I'd be able to. And, my parents, my dad was really wanting me to do something practical because obviously this is not a guarantee. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just study business or whatever. But my mom, she, in a weird kind of twist of fate or something, like she got laid off after she had gotten a promotion because she was considered the person with the least amount of experience. And it just felt like a real kind of betrayal and, and an awful thing because she was in a quote unquote safe job. And then, she had to kind of start over. And so that kind of made her say, you know what, there's no such thing as a safe job. So you might as well do something you really love and you're really good at. So if you need to convince your father that this is something you really want. So she kind of coached me into like really making a case for it. And then he was like, all right. And then he let me go study acting. And then, sorry if this is too long, but then I went to,
this is perfect.
That's excellent.
I went to NYU for acting, and my sophomore year, this is before the internet in the older days.
Yeah.
They had like a cork board, and it was just a piece of paper on a cork board that said, audition for this cartoon, and it was on MTV, and so literally it said like leave a message on an answering machine.
Oh my goodness.
So it was like, what? So like I just called, and it was a cartoon about vampires. So I called and was like, hello, I'd like to be in your cartoon. But like that was enough to kind of get me in the door. And then that show didn't go into production, but they remembered me and called me in for another show called Daria.
Oh yeah, I watched all that.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that was like my first ever job. And then
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I got a little spoiled there. And then it just kind of snowballed. Like it was like I would audition for something else, and then they would, oh, you should you worked on this, you should work on that, and here talk to this guy, and then it was just kind of one of these things where one thing led to another, and I kind of ended up doing a lot of predominantly voiceover work. Like I got to do a Broadway show, and I did a independent low budget film, but pretty much everything I've done is voiceover. So
let me ask you this, since you told that, I mean, that's a great story about your parents and all that stuff. And correct me if I'm not characterizing this right, but how did you overcome that self-doubt? That seems like a lot of what people are struggling with today. Yeah. And I mean, you have any tips as far as that goes? I struggle with it sometimes, and it sounds like you have an amazing story.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really hard. I think in a weird way, it helps me to cope with the self-doubt when I remember that on some level, pretty much everyone else has that self-doubt as well. And then there's something about remembering that, nobody feels, I mean, there's some people that feel 100% confident all the time, but they maybe shouldn't feel that way. And they need to examine
their overconfidence is their weakness.
Yes, exactly. Well done. Well done. There's something about remembering, okay, this is a common experience. And that kind of gives me some courage. I've always had a lot of encouragement, like from my mom or from my teachers, like having people encourage you and help you. And then, I think in hindsight, I don't really hold it against my dad, because he was trying to protect me, and I get it. Having two boys that are starting to go off and leave the nest myself, I find myself kind of feeling like my dad felt. Like you got to be practical. You got to be like, and I kind of get more where he was coming from now. So but I think one thing my dad gave me was this really intense work ethic, and like he always worked super hard to provide, and really instilled kind of like this principle of like you do the right thing because it's the right thing,
right?
Not
right.
If you're not because you might get in trouble if you don't, or it's like you do it because it's right, and you work hard because that's what you do. And And so that, I think a lot of my success is because I'm just trying to really work at things and really try my best at things always. And so I feel like I got that from my dad. I got a lot of encouragement and support from my mom. And, I think there's also a freedom in, well, I'll just say this, but so I'm religious. I'm a Christian, and
we are too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I don't know if this will be helpful to people, or
it's helpful to us.
Sound religious, but yeah. But one of my dear friends, and is a minister also, but he has this little saying that he says is you do your best and let God do the rest. And he talks about the kid, or when Jesus was trying to feed the 5,000, he all they had was the 2 fish and the 5 loaves, and it's well, that's not, there's no way that's going to do it. And you could have just given up and doubted that what I have to do is not going to be, but if you're willing and do the best with what you have, then I believe it's God. But if you don't believe in God, just I do think things can tend to work out if you do your best and kind of leave things that aren't in your control up to I leave them up to God, or whatever, however you conceptualize that.
Exactly.
But I think that all you can do is do your best, and then the rest gets taken care of. And
yes,
so
sir.
I don't know. That's something that, because otherwise the doubt gets crippling. Otherwise the doubt is I'm not good enough, right? I've never done, the first time I did an audiobook was a Star Wars audiobook, and I had never done an audiobook before. So I was how I can't, do this is crazy, So, but you just got to kind of do the best, and then, the gaps get filled in, and you kind of learn as you go, I guess. So
yes, sir.
Now, I think that's an important commentary on confidence and faith that, whether you're a Christian or whatever higher power you believe in, those messages run throughout Star Wars as well. And so I think it's very topical to grasp onto those things in your faith.
Trust in the Force.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And thank you so much for allowing us that segue. I mean, very insightful answer. And I'll circle it back a little bit. Is there something in particular about doing an audiobook that you enjoy versus other mediums, like a cartoon or something like that? Or
I've learned, these are great questions, by the way. What I've learned to love about audiobooks is the idea that you're getting inside the character's head. Meaning, when I do cartoons or shows or whatever, you can maybe see the animation and maybe the character's facial expressions, but you only have their lines to try to communicate what it is you're trying to communicate. And there's something that's really special about when you're reading the book or listening to the book, where you're hearing their inner monologue, and sometimes you might be able to detect or assume what they're thinking based on a facial expression or what the music is doing. And, most of the time that's there, but it's a really unique experience to have words put to what they're thinking, and to really, and to have so much more time to explore what they're thinking, it's so, the movies are, 2.5 hours long, and you get, to spend that much time with those characters, and then you wait several years or whatever, but the books are, 10, 12, sometimes 15, 16 hours long.
right.
So there's so much more time to explore the story and explore what's going on with them emotionally, and kind of what really deep to what their motivations are. And so that's something I've really learned to love about books that growing up, I did not have that appreciation or understanding. I was I got to read, but now I'm oh, this is why people like to read. This is really cool.
I drive a lot, so I get to listen to audiobooks a bunch. It's
cool.
A true blessing.
Yeah. That's really cool that's how I see now that you explain that. I'd never thought of that, but being able to see what the character's thinking and really get inside their head must be, for an actor, that, a dream come true.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
And you said that your first audiobook was a Star Wars audiobook. Well, do you want to tell us the story of how that happened?
Sure.
That seems like a tough gig.
So yeah, my agent called me, and she was hey, have you ever done audiobooks? And I was like, no, not really. And I was kind of trying to maybe talk her out of it because I was like, I was the kid in high school where if you had to do a book report, I would rent the movie and do a book report on the movie because I was like, I don't want to read. Like reading's boring. And I was a slow reader and I didn't always comprehend everything I was reading. And so cartoons, it's like you go in, you're there for an hour and you're out, and you kind of, bit bam boom and it's fun. And so, but the idea of like being in a booth for that many hours is like, that's, nah, not really. And then she said, well, it's a Star Wars audiobook. And I was like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. It's like, yes, I would like to audition for that. Yes. So they sent me like 2 or 3 pages and I just I worked harder on that audition than any other audition I had ever had. I was really, I went back and watched some of the clips from the movies. I was trying to emulate, the characters that were on there. And I prayed about it. I was like, God, please let me get this. And I just really, really worked hard on that audition. And then I went in and Kevin Thompson was there and they had me read and I got it. A couple days later, they told me I got it. But what was crazy is because I hadn't done an audiobook before, I really kind of had to learn how to do it because I think the way I was approaching it is like a play or like a TV show. So I came up with the character voices and I think I probably got hired because I could mimic things and kind of do different distinct voices for the characters. But when it came to the prose and just the straight narration, I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know, I was kind of these are stage directions. So you kind of rush through it to dialogue. Okay, now I know what to do, and and Kevin is a master at audiobooks. He's done them forever. And at one point he said, listen, the dialogue is really engaging and it's really interesting, but your narration is falling really flat and it's really boring. And you got to find a way to make the narration make as much sense as the dialogue is, and it's kind of what I was talking about a second ago about what I love about audiobooks, because the way he phrased this is when the narration says he walked into the room, there was no windows, there were 4 gray walls and it was stark. That's not just, scenery or plot directions. There's a reason why this character is noticing those details, so why are those details important to this character? If it's Luke and he grew up on Tatooine and there was always these vistas to look at and wide open spaces and now he's in this cold, stark, gray, no windows, confined room. How does that affect him emotionally? So when he's saying that, how does it make him feel? And you've got to convey that emotion as you're saying those words, and so the more I started thinking of it as almost like the inner dialogue, it's almost like if what these characters would say in their mind, if you could hear it, it helped me tell the story better. And it helped me kind of, not just do voices, but become a storyteller. And so I'm very grateful to Kevin for that. He really kind of had to walk me through that. But I feel now it's become one of the favorite things I get to do. Before it was oh man, I got to really brace myself. I'm doing an audiobook. This is a lot of hard work, but now it's really a joy. Cause it's I think of it as a one-man show and I get to really explore all these different colors. And so I genuinely love it now, but it took a while to get there.
No, that's great. That's so deep to think of.
Yeah. That's super fascinating that's how you arrived at that process. And because I really do think your narration is off the charts.
It is. It really,
I've thought about this before and listening to these books, and that you were making those details that I would get worried about listening in an audiobook. I'd think those are going to fall to the wayside. And I'm also only going to concentrate on the dialogue. You're really hitting important. There was one, your description of a planet. Gosh, it was in the High Republic books. I think it was Valo and the fair there on Valo. You did an amazing job of describing that. I felt like I was there, and it was basically a whole chapter of just description. Is what it felt like. It was.
Yeah, and I would get I would also kind of check out when I would see those. But I owe that all to Kevin. He's an amazing director, and he's really talented at what he does. So I can't echo that enough. It's so cool to
you just get an insight on that and understand it. So like recording these things, what is that like? Is it a whole like marathon session? Does it take days, weeks? I mean, multiple takes, or is it you do like one chapter at a time? What's the mechanics of how this stuff works?
Yeah, put us in the sound booth with you.
Yeah. So everybody reads at different paces. Like, January Lavoie is like an amazing award-winning narrator, and she's like super skilled. And I think I've heard that she can do things in like 3 days or something like that, and she's like really good. It takes me like sometimes 5 or 6 days. So like I'm not a fast reader. So you get in, and for me, we get in usually around 10 or whatever. And you got the script up, and then for the Star Wars books, we have a pronunciation list where anytime there's like an alien name.
We talked about this on our last episode. Sorry.
Oh, did you?
We argued about if you had a pronunciation list.
Yeah, no, we do. It's I think it's still Leland Chi. I could be wrong, but his nickname is the Keeper of the Holocron, and they they have a database of like, all these books and cartoons and shows. Anytime these words appear, and they try to keep it consistent. I will say, after 40 some odd years, and who knows how many hundreds, if not thousands, of books and video games and shows, and that, sometimes you get a Twi'lek, or, more recently we had Marcion and Markion, and, so there were.
I remember that. I was wondering about the switch.
Yeah. So it's just with the companies as big it is, and there's so many concurrent projects happening at the same time, inevitably something will not get passed down or communicated, or sometimes something will happen. So and whenever that happens, we tend to go on, oh, it's a big galaxy, or it's like tomato, Leia, or Han, it's like sometimes people say things different ways, and so George Lucas would kind of made some reference to that or something. So but as much as we can, we try to. Mistakes will happen, but as much as we can, we really try to keep it consistent. And so there's that pronunciation list, and the authors chime in, and Lucasfilm chimes in, and we try to get all that consistent. And so you get in the booth, and you start at chapter 1 and you go straight through in chronological order. So like in animation, what we'll do is, if I'm playing multiple characters in animation, I'll record all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Duke Devlin's lines, and then I'll go back and record all of Valen's lines or Raphael's lines or whatever, But in audiobooks, we just go straight through, mainly for editing reasons, because with a project that big, it would be a nightmare for the editor to have to like go back and insert them all, and and also it just helps the flow of the story more if you're going straight through chronologically. So you get in there and you do it. And for me, I'm there most of the time. It's at least 5 days, sometimes 6, and I'm there 10 in the morning till 6 at night. And I always joke that they like let me out for food and water and bathroom, but otherwise it's like read, so, but yeah, and lots of mistakes, like for me at least, like I bumble and jumble and will say lines of dialogue is the wrong character, like I'll get through a whole paragraph, and then it'll say like, the Chancellor said, and I thought it was like, Stellan Geos or something. I'm like, so lots of stops and starts, and I definitely give the editors a lot to have to do, but it's definitely a marathon, and it is like, I always feel bad complaining about it, because it's not like I'm working in a coal mine or something, or like there's plenty of jobs that are legitimately hard to do, like but of all the things I do, of like animation or commercials or cartoons, the books are the hardest thing, physically, to like kind of have to read for that long, and your voice gets tired, and your mind gets tired, and so it's a bit of a challenge, but it's very, very fun.
That's awesome. So you had mentioned something that I wanted to touch on in one of our questions in that answer. You said that you get to work with the authors. And so I'm curious on a couple things. One, when you have directions, like you're reading Lando, does it have directions for you to say Han instead of Han? And then the other direction is, do the authors ever provide you direction on what they think a character might sound like? Did Tim Zahn tell you this is what Eli Vantos sounds like, or did you come up with that voice all on your own?
Yeah. So the times that I've done it, generally we're not getting performance notes from the authors, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, I know different narrators have different approaches, and sometimes narrators do reach out to the authors, and that's great. And but a lot of times I don't, because sometimes it can be a little bit of an issue of like too many cooks in the kitchen, or because Kevin's directing. So if Kevin has an idea, but then I go, yeah, but Tim said, then it kind of like, can cause problems or communication issues or whatever. And then also there's just the practical reason of a lot of times I'm getting these scripts like maybe a few weeks before we have to go in the booth. So I wouldn't even know what questions to ask the author until I've finished reading the book. And then by the time I'm finished reading the book, a lot of times it's like a week out from recording, and or a couple days before recording, and I have to, it's just, there's a speed to it where it's like we kind of got to make a choice and go. And then also it's just, most of the time what the authors have said in their writing is a lot of the work of trying to figure out what that character should sound like. A lot of times there's descriptions in the book itself about, like they had a rough voice, or a light baritone, or a accented basic, or that they'll say different things like that kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking for. So we kind of go from there, and so most of the time it's just I don't want to step on Kevin's toes, and I don't want to a lot of times just the speed doesn't allow it. So personally for me, I try to just kind of approach it from there, and it's just a practical time issue for me that we've done it that way. So but yeah, and then the Han Han thing, that was a choice that we made just because we remember that Billy D did it that way, and we wanted to kind of honor those films. And then Eli, there was something about like he was described as, I feel like if I'm remembering correctly, because it's been several years now, but I believe he was described as being from a planet that was kind of close to the unknown regions and like on the border of something. And I always think of the Empire as this like high society, metropolitan, a lot of times
real affluent.
Yeah, the affluent. Yeah, like exactly. And so what I was thinking of, when you get further in the outer rim to the point where it's the unknown regions, my mind goes to more rural or kind of,
sounds more like us.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I'm picking my words very carefully.
No, you're good.
But I wanted it to, that was kind of some of the choices I was making. And so, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that's excellent. So like for so many people, me included, like you are the voice for Star Wars books. Do you feel any kind of responsibility for helping so many readers take their first step into the larger Star Wars galaxy or something like that?
Well, now I do. No, yeah. No, I do. I think, I mean, there's a lot of really talented narrators, and, Jonathan Davis is awesome, and January is amazing, and Saskia is amazing, and Sean Kennan has done some really incredible stuff, and many, many others. And so, but I'm really grateful anytime I get to do one, and just, anytime you see the word Star Wars on something, I'm like, to me, it's like, that there's like a reverence and an awe that I'm like, oh, like we have to like treat this very carefully. And, because I being a fan of it, I know the quality I would want it to have. So I feel that pressure anytime I do any of those projects, and just, I really want it to be the best it can be, because that's what I would want. Like if I was listening to it, I would want it to be, you know, honoring what had come before and, you know, really trying to be on par with this thing that was so formative to me. So
yeah, it really shows. It really does.
It is. You can tell that you're a fan. I think you can tell a fan through your Instagram posts, through this interview, and even through your audiobook reading. It's pretty clear.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Since you're a fan, and since you're so familiar with a variety of Star Wars stories, do you have a favorite era? Like when they say, "Oh yeah, this book is an original trilogy book," you get the most excited, or "Oh, this book is a High Republic book." You know, do you have a time period or a cast of characters that you like following around?
Oh, that's another one of those hard ones. It's like, I mean, it's been a while since I've gotten to do one, but I think, you know, because of my age, my favorite era probably is the original trilogy and just those characters. And I don't know if we'll ever get to do full on. I mean, I did Princess and the Scoundrel recently with Han and Leia, and that was pretty fun to go back to them.
My wife and I did a Valentine's Day episode of our podcast over it, and it was her first Star Wars audiobook. And so when she heard it, she was like, "You're interviewing that guy that we heard?"
Oh, that's so cool. So yeah, like I think I'll go with that one, like just for nostalgia reasons. Although I gotta say, I feel like what they're doing, and I know people are gonna think maybe I'm just saying this because I'm paid by them, but like I really love the High Republic. I feel like they've done such a great job of deepening our understanding of the Force, and just seeing the Jedi at their zenith has been such a treat. And I love the idea of the Nile, and like, you know, that I love this idea that it's not that I was kind of like at first, like I was like, well, how are you going to do the Jedi without the Sith? Like, you know, we need the Sith. Like, where are they? You know, and like, but like I feel like having this like kind of cult of anarchists be the foil for the Jedi is such a brilliant idea that you know, and also what they've done in Phase 2 with the Path of the Open Hand. It's like they keep picking these really interesting adversaries for them that are philosophical adversaries, not necessarily like, you know, toe for toe, like I have a blue lightsaber, I have a red lightsaber, you know, but it's like more like ideologically we are opposed. Like you believe in order and sacrifice, and I believe in, you know, ride the storm. I want what I want and I'll take what I want, you know, and just like it's like such an interesting thing that helps you, that they both kind of enhance each other. And, you know, so anyway, I'm really, really loving that era. So that could be a close second, if not overtaking it at some point.
That's awesome.
That's excellent to hear.
You stole a question right off the page. I mean, I wanted to totally ask about, because I'm a big High Republic fan. Cool. You said, the first thing you said is exactly why I like it. How much they've deepened the Force and given us a bigger understanding of the Force in those books has been, I mean, because, you know, people in Star Wars, they like the Wars and the Rebel Alliance and the Empire, or they like the lore and they love the Jedi. And I'm all about the Jedi lore. Yeah. So that's awesome, too, man.
Yeah. Just the idea of, like Charles Soule did this brilliant thing in Light of the Jedi, where it's like each Jedi perceives the Force slightly different, and they each have kind of their own metaphor or allegory that helps them understand. And I thought that was such a cool way of, even like in our world, like how people perceive the mysteries of life in different ways, and they have whether that's different religions or different worldviews, or you know, like we all kind of conceptualize this experience of life in all these different ways. And I thought that was a cool science fiction way of addressing that thing that we all wrestle with. And I just love it. I think it's so cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Excellent. So, you know, we know you're part of that voice cast for William Shakespeare's Star Wars audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
Was that more difficult with it being an iambic pentameter? How was that?
It was like, you know, you can imagine my aversion to reading, was doubled by Shakespeare, because like not only do I have to read, but it's like language that I don't understand, and the these and the thous and the, you know, all the rhyming stuff. But what's really interesting about those is, you know, I'm kind of a Star Wars connoisseur, so I found that doing the Star Wars Shakespeare helped me understand Shakespeare better. Like I was like, oh, you mean like the stuff that's going on in Hamlet is similar to, what, Luke was feeling here, or what, or like what happened with Macbeth is what, was, and so there was something about the Star Wars stuff helped me understand what some of these, common sayings or phrases in Shakespeare meant in a deeper way. And I was like, so I was kind of like, if my English teacher could have seen me now, it's like, I get it now. Like, I get what you're saying, so that's really interesting. So Ian
that's
Deschler
really
is
good.
a genius.
That's great. Did you said that you had a theater background. Did you ever act Shakespeare before?
I never, only in scenes in school, like never, I never did an actual play of Shakespeare. And again, I was always pretty daunted by the language, but like I have a friend, Jeff Owens, who's like an amazing Shakespearean actor. And it was like, when you see him do it, it's like, oh, of course, like, like when you see it done well, it's obvious, like why people love Shakespeare, and like, but it's that barrier of really trying to understand what the language is so that you can, really communicate it. And so it's, I've always, when it's done well, I do admire it, but there was definitely a block when I would read it. I would try to
Right.
I did Macbeth in high school, and it wasn't anywhere near that near that level. You wouldn't have been impressed by that one. One of the questions we really wanted to ask you is that, we have heard that in the Star Wars space, like as soon as you're a Star Wars creator of any caliber, you're like part of the family. You're like in a fraternity of Star Wars creators. And so do you feel a deep kinship with other people who do Star Wars, whether that's, animators or authors or anyone involved in the universe?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, like, I think, I think there's something about, like, it's a really interesting time, because the people that are making Star Wars now are people that, for the most part, have grown up on Star Wars and love Star Wars. So in that sense, you feel a sense of kinship in that sense, because for them to be working on it, most likely, 9 times out of 10, they share that love for Star Wars that you have. So there's an immediate bond and kinship because of that. And then, at least it's been my experience that most of the people that I've met that work on Star Wars are super kind and super generous. And, like, I've gotten to meet Ashley Eckstein a couple times and do some panels with her for some of the Star Wars audiobooks. And she's the real deal. Like, she's just so genuine and kind, and like signed a thing for my boys when they were younger, and, love her. And I got to meet James Arnold Taylor. When I first started doing animation, I went to a convention that he was at, and we were like both guests at it, but he was obviously a much higher guest or whatever. And so it was right when he was doing the micro series for Clone Wars, like the original, was it Gary?
Yeah, Tartakovsky's series.
Thank you. Yes. And I was totally fanboying all over him. And but he, like, totally didn't have to do this, but like he like exchanged numbers with me and took me out to lunch and gave me all this advice, and like super, super kind, and just really, really amazing. And then, the authors I've gotten to meet, like Timothy Zahn and Kevin Scott and Claudia Gray, and like they're just so kind. And so I do feel kind of like a kinship, or with a lot of people. And yeah, so I'm not sure what to attribute it to, but it seems like there's a spirit of trying to be a light, or trying to kind of bring goodness into the world, and I don't know. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
No, that's excellent. You have any funny or unique moments that you'd like to share from like a recording session or something that maybe like stands out in your memory?
Right. I mean, I guess it's funny in retrospect, but like when we were recording the Thrawn books, there was one character I just could not say their name. I think it's Kilori of Uwandualan or something like that. I might be butchering it now, even, but like there was one day where like it it was probably 20 or 30 takes of just Kyori, and I just like, it was just like total brain short circuit, could not get it out. And I was like, they were like, why don't you get up and walk around the studio? Like, why, do you need a granola bar? Why don't you have a granola bar? And it's just like, and at the time it was like, if the first few times it's like, ha ha ha, isn't this funny? But then later on it's like, come on, dude, do we need to get somebody else in here? And I was like, eventually I did it. So, and they can edit out the other ones. So
yeah, good.
That's a good story.
You have had a really prolific career beyond Star Wars, and I was just curious if you have a favorite project that you've done beyond Star Wars audiobooks.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate. I think probably if I had to choose, my next one would probably be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because I was a big fan of that one growing up. And I got to do Casey Jones on that, so that was a big deal for me, and I really love the animation in that one, and it's like kind of this perfect balance of like humor and action adventure, and so I'm gonna go with Casey Jones, but I'm very grateful for everything I got to do, and then Megatron is pretty close second because that was also like on Transformers. So.
I've got a little cousin. He's 16 and he loves Transformers. And so I told him today, I was like, hey, have you seen Transformers
Cyberverse, yeah.
Cyberverse. And I said, have you seen that? He was like, yeah. And I was like, did you think Megatron did a good job? And he was kind of weirded out. He was like, well, yeah, I thought he was a good Megatron. I was like, yeah, we're interviewing that guy. Lost his mind. He lost his
awesome.
mind.
Yeah, I really like that. The way that one turned out looked really great. Sorry, my kids are practicing guitar right now. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It's okay. I can barely hear it. Not a problem at all.
So, are you able to tell us about any upcoming projects you're excited for? Pull back the curtain just a tad.
I have to be careful because there's always NDAs and stuff.
Doesn't have to be Star Wars. Could be anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
know Star Wars is the toughest with the NDAs.
Yeah. Well, see, there's another, like, I think everything even beyond Star Wars that I'm about to do is on NDA right now, actually. So I can't say anything.
We'll be on the lookout.
You will be hearing me on some things in the future. I just can't say what they are.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. So we want to ask you, do you have any insight for people who are aspiring voice actors? You touched on your experience, moving into the acting space and becoming a voice actor. Is there any direct advice you have for someone listening to this who may want to do that as a career?
Yeah. I think number one, like I would try to get as much experience and education about acting as possible. And just, because the better actor you are, the better voice actor you'll be, and sometimes people will try to, the voice aspect is important, and you do have to learn certain skills about how to use your voice and different vocal techniques. But the acting is more important because the vocal stuff is a little bit more technical and a little bit easier to pick up, but acting is not as easy to pick up, and it takes a little bit more training and experience to really get that. So I would audition for plays, community theater, practice reading scripts, create your own content, but just try to get as much like improv, like all that type of stuff, I think really helps. And then, the easiest, not easiest, but like D. Bradley Baker, who, the legend of Clone Wars and the Bad Batch and everything, he would get asked this question all the time, and he's actually created a website called I want to be a voice actor.com. And it's the most like comprehensive and thorough description I've seen of like, here are the steps of how to get a demo together. Here's, if you're going to have a recording space, here's how to maybe get a booth together or things like that. Here's some, techniques and stuff. So that's a great place to also start if you're looking to get into that. So
yeah,
awesome.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So we're going to wrap this up. This is the last question.
Oh, wait,
we're
can I ask you guys a question before that?
Yeah.
There's behind you, there's a Jedi. Is that Return of the Jedi photo or?
Yeah, it's a poster I have of Return of the Jedi.
Oh, neat. I've never seen it.
It's it's one of the original posters that they had right after the name change from Revenge, and it's actually signed by Peter Mayhew, Jeremy Bullock, and Anthony Daniels.
Oh, no way.
Yes, yeah, I got to meet him in Dallas. Yeah, it was awesome. I was really, really grateful to get to meet them all.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's my prized Star Wars possession. For sure.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question.
Yeah, and for our audio only listeners, sorry you didn't see that, but check us out on Patreon.
Gotta be a Patreon.
Yeah. So last question, and this is Capstone. We like the movies are so prolific, right? What's your favorite Star Wars movie?
It's Empire Strikes Back. Like,
yes, that's mine.
All right, good. Good company. Yeah, it's just Yoda means a lot to me, and that scene with Luke raising the X-wing out just is pretty formative for me. So I just love that scene, and the idea that you don't judge something by the way it looks, and that it's not about what you can do and your strength, but it's about the Force and what the Force can do, and like. So that's a pretty pivotal scene for me, and that movie's amazing, and just I just love everything about that movie, and I love them all, but Empire is by far my favorite. So
yes, sir.
Well, as you mentioned at the beginning, how important your faith is to you, I can see why that scene would be really impactful for what you're talking about. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Mark, we really, really appreciate you joining us today. This was awesome. We are super grateful to get to talk to someone of your caliber, and all of your contributions to Star Wars have been so important. Do you have anything that you want to say? Like, where can people find you on socials, or where can people connect with you and, check out your work?
Yeah. So if people want to follow me, I'm Captain Ehud on Instagram and Twitter. And I'm Marc Thompson on Facebook. It's MARC. And I've actually been going to a lot of different appearances. There's been a lot of interest in my animation work lately, and so I don't know when this will be airing or people will be hearing it, but on July 1st, I'll be at the Brick City Comic and Toy Show in Ocala, Florida. And then on July 8th and 9th, I will be at the Nerds Assemble convention in Arkansas, Jonesboro, Arkansas. And then I'm going to be at San Diego Comic-Con with the audiobooks and promoting High Republic over there. And I'll be at Cosplay World in Virginia, August 5th and 6th. And so I'm kind of popping around all different places. And if you ever do want to meet up or anything like that, I'll be posting all that on my social media. So
yeah, maybe
thank you guys. This has been a really great interview. You guys are really great at this.
Yeah, thanks, man. We really appreciate it. And like we said, we are super grateful for you being on here. We really hope everyone will go check you out at these cons. You've got a busy summer coming up, it sounds like. And so I hope some people will go check you out there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been very delightful, very insightful. All the adjectives.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Mark. We appreciate it.
No, thank you guys.
Wow. I mean, that was a treat. That was awesome.
Did you expect that was going to happen? I went into this, hey, we're gonna ask this cool guy some cool questions.
Yep.
And I was way underestimating this thing.
I know the quality that he gave on all these answers, the in-depth perspectives that he had on acting and Star Wars and faith and all of these things are really, really important. I hope that everyone listening to this, if you're listening to this, I really hope you connected with that, because I certainly did. I mean, this was a blast. One of the most fun podcasts we've done so far.
Down to earth. He's one of the best guys. One of the best people that I've ever had the pleasure of talking to in any context. I mean, I can get just what he has to share about growing up and I mean, because I don't want to be an actor. I love doing this podcast, but breaking into that shell and doing all this stuff, this is a daunting task. He told us how he did it, and it's not an insurmountable thing. It makes me, I don't want to be a voice actor, but it makes me look, that's a path that before was in shadow and now is revealed, I guess, in a sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have to want to be an actor to say that getting insight into what it's like to be in that recording booth and how these books are recorded is A, just interesting, and B, I think is going to give me even deeper appreciation of these performances.
Yeah. And like he did that Han Solo voice, and I think he did a couple other real basic ones, but we should have had him ask him to do a couple more because, oh my gosh, you saw me chills. And he said 3 or 4 words.
Yeah, I know. It was awesome. And, Colin, in that video and audio, he made reference to a few visual things. He made some really hilarious faces. He's an actor. I mean, he's gesticulating. He is big and he is present in this video. So if you're listening to this podcast and you missed some of those moments or you missed something that he may have pointed out in the background, well, then head on over to Patreon because you can check out the audio and video of this interview at the $1 tier. It's open to all of our patrons. If you're a patron, it's on there. It isn't a tier reward. We just decided, you know what? We're recording this on video. We got to have a way to share it. We're going to give it to our patrons. So go head over there and check it out because I'm not lying. The video is definitely worth it.
Yeah, you have to go subscribe over there to see what the poster that he asked Carter about. It's one of Carter's posters. I don't want to steal his thunder. I mean, elaborate that a little more. How'd you get that thing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I went to Dallas Fan Expo, and I got to meet Mayhew and Anthony Daniels and Jeremy Bullock, and they were all wonderful guys.
The point is, one thing is Marc Thompson isn't just an actor. He's an immense Star Wars fan. He commented, I mean, you just heard it. He hasn't seen that poster anywhere.
Right.
We got to teach him, Carter got to teach him something about Star Wars that he didn't know. I mean, and he's been around longer than us. He talked about owning these action figures. I haven't owned these action figures.
Yep.
That's something we all lament from being back in the day, wishing we could have done. Those of us that are old enough.
Sure. Right? I wasn't even thinking about it at the time, but you're absolutely right. I've got just one old Star Wars action figure, singular R2-D2 from the original Kenner run. My uncle gave it to me, and all of the stickers are gone.
Yeah.
The only way you can tell is there's this little dot of blue paint on the astromech, and that's the only way you could tell that was R2-D2.
Right, still.
But it's great. I mean, yeah, I love having it. So, anyway, Colin, I mean, I don't have a whole lot more to say about Marc because you folks all just heard it. He had so many great things to say. He had so much wisdom to share. He had a lot of insight. And this was a really, really great interview. I had a blast. And for everyone listening, and if you've been listening along for a long time, this is our first interview. I hope we did okay. And please let us know. Come tell us on Instagram. Come tell us on the YouTube comments. Let us know wherever how you think we did on this first interview of ours because we always want to improve on that. We've already got some other interviews lined up and scheduled. So
yeah, we work really hard for this. Lots of thought goes into everything that we do. And so we really enjoy any feedback you might have. And again, Marc Thompson, what a guy. What a guy.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. All right, Colin, that is going to wrap up the main meat of our podcast. And so now we're going to head over into the HoloNet news.
You made the HoloNet.
All right, Colin, I dropped the ball this week on the news section. And so you picked up the slack. You did the news research this week.
I did.
Why don't you tell us about our news stories?
Oh, my gosh. There's a few of them in here. Where I start even, there's new Ahsoka footage coming out this weekend.
I know. And I've heard about it. I've seen that floating around Twitter. And really what I want to know is, what is it going to be? I've got a little bit of speculation on what it might be, but we have no clue what we're going to get to see. But brand new footage is always welcome.
Yeah. We've had this trickled out, right? The first thing we saw was from what is in London over there? They call that the Star Wars convention. Celebration.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. That's how my mind works. I forget words all the time. Anyway, so Celebration, and then we got another one that was mostly that Celebration trailer and a few other little scenes. So this is what I think it's going to be, is just a few little trickles and tidbits and this and there. But what I tell you, what I want to see is, I want to see Thrawn speak. I want to see that. I want to see Mikkelsen. I want to see him say something, do something. I mean, we've talked a lot about Thrawn this month. I think this would be, this one's going to happen this weekend, and then it's going to be just over a month that we get to see this TV show, right? Maybe 2 months.
2 months.
And so this is why I think a morsel that's going to get us sustained until until we get to see it.
They've got experts over there telling them exactly how to slow drip this content out to us to make sure that we're going to spend every dollar in our pocket on it. The Lars Mikkelsen is, I also agree. I think that shot that they showed at Celebration is the most likely to come across. And then the other thing that I'm actually betting on, which this is way out of left field. I mean, I'm talking super out of left field. I think that they are going to show Quarry, the Mon Cal from Rebels Season 3 or 2, Rebels Season 2, who develops the prototype B-Wing, the Blade Wing that Hera pilots. And the reason I think that we're going to get exclusive footage of Quarry is because the Lego set leaks for Ahsoka confirmed that he is in the Lego sets,
cool.
and he hadn't shown up yet. So I was just like, well, they're probably going to show us that, and that way super duper Star Wars nerds like us can point at the screen for 2 seconds and say, oh my God, it's Quarry in the background.
Yeah,
and we'll be the only ones that pick it up. So I'm super pumped about that. I think Quarry's coming.
Where you can find this footage is at the Essence Fest. I'm sure it's going to be streamed and linked on all your favorite Star Wars YouTube and TikToks and everything else. I bet we'll have something out there, commentary on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So our next piece, since I found these out, is what? James Mangold to start writing Dawn of the Jedi in October if the strike ends. Carter, do you think that strike's going to end by then?
Yeah, see, it's super important to read the first half of that headline and go, he's going to write this in October. Does James Mangold have a crystal ball? And then you read the third part and it's, oh, if the strike ends. And so, you know, I'm no expert on labor strikes. I'm not an expert on Hollywood. And so I don't have a good perspective. The last strike, I think, was in like 2007 or 11. And I was a kid both times. Right. And so I wasn't super familiar with the timeline on those. So I don't have a strike end prediction. But if James Mangold thinks it's going to, wow. I'm telling you, this this laryngitis is kicking my butt. Anyways, if James Mangold thinks that he is going to be able to write this in October, then I trust him, and I think the strike will be over in October.
If anybody knew, he would know, right?
Exactly.
So last piece of footage is actually a really, really big one. It's going to be fun to speculate about this. Lucasfilm boss, Kathleen Kennedy, reveals a link between two upcoming Star Wars films, and that is Rey's upcoming movie and the ultimate prequel, 25,000 years into the past, The First Jedi, right?
Yeah, and that's an exciting concept, and that's one that I half expected for a few reasons, but the main reason I kind of half expected this is the books that Rey acquires during The Last Jedi that are the sacred texts for the Jedi. I mean, who else wrote those but the Prime Jedi? They're on Ahch-To. They're where the Order first began. They didn't leave Ahch-To with the rest of the Jedi. There's going to be a reason for that. So in James Mangold's movie, we're going to get the protagonist write these books and have to leave them on Ahch-To for some reason.
Right.
And so that's going to be the link, is Ahch-To and the books, is my speculation.
Yeah, and I kind of hope it's a little bit more than that. You know, Rey is starting from scratch, and there's a lot of potential there. You know, in all of the sequel movies was little Force-sensitive people. You know, what's coming to my mind is the child at the racetrack drawing the broom up, right?
Yeah.
So there's lots of Force-sensitive people out there, lots of potential, and she is all of the Jedi, contrasted to all the Sith, which are dead, right? And unless somebody survived that onslaught there, which I kind of doubt it, you know, there's going to be an era of peace without these machinations going about. And so, being that as she has to start from scratch, hopefully there's a callback. You know, we're going to have both of these movies intertwined. And I think what you said is a perfect example of a callback like this. Maybe something more like since she is all the Jedi, seeking this out in some sort of mind adventure or something like that. Kind of base to put it that way, but you know what I'm saying about
right.
You know,
no, I think, well, you look at the Dawn of the Jedi movie and you look at who's going to be the antagonist, and we don't know, obviously. I mean, we just said James Mangold hadn't even written this yet, but from the subject matter, they have to do, I mean, and a tiny bit of retconning. It's not a lot of retconning, but they'd have to do a tiny bit of retconning to make the adversary the Sith in that movie. And I don't know if that's the direction they would want to take anyway. And so we just heard in this Marc Thompson interview, he said he was such a big fan of the Nihil and of the Path of the Open Hand and of these threats to the Jedi that are not direct adversaries of theirs like the Sith. They're not the opposites of them. They're philosophical adversaries. And with the Sith being gone, as we assume in this Rey movie, she's going to need a new adversary. And so you could imagine that they could connect it with that, some ancient, long-forgotten threat. Maybe there's a reason those books never should have left Octo in the first place, and someone was after those books or something like that we don't have any idea yet. I mean, in Legends, there's all kinds of ideas of giant space stations protecting whole planets, or, species couldn't get somewhere because of some MacGuffin that was there, and there's no reason that something like that couldn't be. So, there, like you said, there could be a way more direct link between the two movies, in that the antagonists or the antagonist of both movies is the same, which would be mind-blowing.
That'd be cool.
That would be, super cool, right? I would be all about that one.
Right,
but
right.
we have no way of knowing that, and we won't even when Rey's movie comes out, we won't know it until James Mangold's movie comes out.
Right.
But I would really, really like to see a link like that. I think it'd be fun.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Is that all the news, or we got one more?
That's all the news.
Okay, all right.
That's all the news.
That's all the news for today.
Short segment, but we're in the throes of summer, man. People are having fun.
Yeah,
there's not a lot going on. There's little tidbits like Andor here and there, but
sure,
there's not enough meat there.
Last week was thin too, but that's the nature of Star Wars news. It's a shame because it's always such a flood. I mean, you listen to some of our episodes, and it's like the news section is 8 stories long, and they are all monumental. Oh, this show's coming out, and oh, this person, blah blah blah. But right now, it's just like, I mean, I wouldn't say we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. These are good news stories.
There's really good news stories. I really like that link idea. That's going to be so fun. There's going to be an episode over just that. I can predict it right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So Colin, in the throes of how wonderful Marc Thompson's interview went, and me refilling my mug of hot tea, I skipped the How the Force Works segment. So
it's all right.
Apologies to everyone listening that we were a little out of order. But we now have our patron-powered segment, which is How the Force Works. And so if you're unfamiliar with how the Force works, it's really, really simple. It is that we take a question from one of our patrons at the Jedi Knight tier or above. And so they pose us this question, we answer it, we have a lot of fun. It has something to do with Star Wars or Lucasfilm or whatever. And so, without further ado, Colin, here is How the Force Works.
That's not how the Force works.
All right, Colin. Today's question comes from Tristan Franks, and this is a pretty topical question. And so I would like to ask you, what do you expect from the opening of Ahsoka? First thing we're seeing on that screen.
Yeah, first thing, let's see. Ahsoka's lightsaber ignite, and she gets into a fight with somebody, right? So, but really, I mean, I think that'll be the literal first thing that's what's going to be that thing that grabs you and draws you in. It's going to be a fight of some kind. And being says it's the Ahsoka show, it's going to be Ahsoka, right? So, but shortly after that, what the first episode is going to be is meeting some of the old Rebels characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, Rebels season 5.
Yeah, and then I mean, like Sabine is obviously going to be the one that we meet then. And then we said this once, we've said it a dozen times. All these scenes that we've seen in the trailer, there's a lot of them that are going to be in the first couple episodes, right? And then I don't think that with all this telegraphing being done, I think we're going to see Thrawn in this episode. Just as that, he'll be in the last little bit of this first episode, right? And then, like, do you think there's going to be a crawl that this thing starts off with? I think that's a good idea.
That's a good thought because, you know, Filoni is such a student of Lucas, and I think it's a possibility that there could be a crawl, and that's something that haven't had since The Rise of Skywalker, and that they've said secondary projects aren't going to have, or, you know, not Skywalker Saga projects are going to have, but I think it'd be really welcome.
Well, if this thing is going to capstone with a Mando-verse movie, it makes sense to me.
Yeah,
like this is going to be, you know, technically you could call like these other Mandoverse characters is like an establishment of culture, and this could potentially be the first quote unquote film in that Mando, in the capstone Mandoverse thing.
Right, sure. I mean, who's to say we're not going to have a Mando saga the same as the Skywalker saga? I mean, with nearly the same number of entries. The thing I will say about this Ahsoka opening is I really like this question because it's Star Wars under Disney has gotten pretty creative with different openings. You've got, Solo, where they use the light blue text on the black background to tell you just like 2 sentences worth of information. You've got all the Disney Plus shows that have had that scrolling like heads and droids and helmets thing, and then no real hard intro, except this is where my idea comes from. You did have one very unique intro entry, and that is in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. They did that whole 3 or 4 minute segment on what happened in the prequels. They just retold some of the most important scenes from the prequels.
Right.
And so Ahsoka has a potential to do something really cool
Yeah, with
here.
the Rebels. Wouldn't that be nice?
Clone Wars and Rebels put right together there. Even throw in the Mando scenes so it's not kind of jarring to see animated Ahsoka go to live action. But you just cut and splice right there. The one issue there I think they would maybe run into is voice continuity. They might have to get Rosario to go back and redub Ahsoka's lines in those scenes, which would be really jarring. And obviously, some fans, including myself, would probably be upset because Ashley Eckstein is, she's Ahsoka.
Love that stuff.
I think Rosario Dawson's gonna do a great job, and we've seen her a little bit, but she hasn't proven herself near as much as Ashley Eckstein has in the role. And so to do that would be wrong. And so there's another possibility that they just do Rebels scenes, but they reshoot Rebels scenes with the live action characters as a little bit of a prequel too. I don't know if that was in their budget. I don't know if that was top of the priority list, was refilming things that have already happened. But I do think that they have the potential to do something super cool and get everybody caught up with Ahsoka's life at the very beginning of that show in just a couple minutes. And you take all the pressure off of people who don't want to watch the animated stuff. They go into the first season of Ahsoka. Maybe they aren't understanding everything that's going on, and they're like, well, I'm going to have to go back and watch the animated stuff. If you do this little summary right at the beginning, they're not going to have to do that.
Yep. I think that's a great idea. I hope that happens.
I do, too. I do. I hope so, too. Colin, that wraps up How the Force Works. Tristan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tristan,
for that question. Anybody listening to this, if you head over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station and you want to ask us a question, then it's just that easy. Go over there, go to the Jedi Knight tier or above, and you can ask us any question you want. So, Colin, that brings us to our last segment of the podcast, and that is the Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, Colin, why don't you tell me and all of our listeners what your Star Wars moment of the week is?
So I've talked about this a bunch in a sense. I have an immense amount of Star Wars Legos. The most recent large set is the one you have as well, is the Cantina on Tatooine, Mos Eisley Cantina. Mm-hmm. And I think you put yours together, right?
Yeah, it's actually sitting right beside us in this room, in this brown box, because I don't have anywhere to put it, and it's super like you need to put this on a shelf where it's not going to fall off anything.
Right.
So right now it's just boxed up.
So mine sits prominently sealed in its original container, and it drives my children insane that I do not put these together.
Right.
My children, we sell Legos at one of my stores, and they probably put together a Lego set every week. Not necessarily Star Wars. They'll get there eventually. But, he bought a fireman set the other day. It's a lot of fun. It has a drone in it. It's cool.
Oh, cool.
But it drives him so crazy because I just these boxes stacked in my office of, like I said, this Cantina just sitting there. One of the ones I'm most proud of is the Luke and Leia Death Star jump or swing by. And so that one has increased in value by a bunch. I can't get, far be it from me to explain to a 5-year-old why don't open a box because it increases in value. They have no concept of money.
Right.
But that's not to say I haven't put together a bunch of other Lego sets. One of those I'm most proud of, and I know you own one of these as well, is the Emperor's Throne Room.
Oh, yeah. It's so great. You got that one for me.
I purchased that one for you. These sets, collecting Legos, they cycle out of production, and if they make another one, it's different. So they're all collectible. They all have unique numbers. And so in some cases, I'll buy 2 sets. In some cases, I won't. I think I have a Kylo Ren shuttle. I think that's a really cool. I played with that in the X-Wing game, so I wanted to look at that and look at it on my shelf as well. But of the sets I have put together, I love putting them together. But of the sets I haven't put together, like I said, it drives my kids insane.
Yeah.
They bought me those little bags, and every time I think of those, I think of that Darth Revan figure that's worth $200+ that was sold in that little bag. And I'm like, I'm not opening this thing. I have a couple of pod racers. I'm not opening them.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
That's hilarious. That's a good moment of the week. Mine's also a little bit of an understated moment of the week. Mine's super understated, actually. I was watching The Bear on Hulu. Just came out this week.
What is that show?
Oh, man. It is a phenomenal show about a professional chef, and by professional chef I mean like Michelin star chef.
Oh yeah.
Who goes back and runs his brother's rundown Italian beef sandwich restaurant in Chicago after his brother killed himself.
I love Italian beef.
Yeah. And so what a crazy thing to say after what I just said. Anyways, so it's a dramedy. It's very funny, but it's super tense. And if you've ever worked in the food service industry, which I did for 3 months in high school, so I'm an expert.
You're a veteran.
But really, from what I remember, it simulates what it's like in a restaurant kitchen really well. Like, you have massive stress and anxiety watching this show. And so it's kind of like watching a thriller, but it's obviously there's no jump scare. And so the show's super funny. I really can't say enough good things about it. Everyone should go check it out on Hulu. It doesn't have anything to do with Star Wars, except for in the last episode of the last season, season 2 just came out, they make a hilarious Star Wars reference. Like, it's perfectly timed. They did a super good job. And I won't reveal what it is because I want everyone listening to this to go watch that show. Yeah. But that was my Star Wars moment of the week, was laughing so hard I nearly fell out of my chair at this Star Wars.
I got to go check it out now.
It's worth it. Yeah, you got to watch all 2 seasons. But that was my Star Wars moment of the week. And I think that wraps up our podcast for today, Colin. We had a blast with Marc Thompson. I was super grateful for him to come and to talk with us. I know that we just had an awesome time, and we're looking forward to many more interviews with a lot of other people involved with Lucasfilm and publishing, Star Wars publishing, and all of these different areas of Star Wars. But I'm going to let my voice rest while Colin carries us out of this episode.
Yeah, so the main takeaway is that you need to see, we recorded this interview with Marc Thompson. You need to see that. Listen to it is great. We love to have you listen to this, but pony up $1, watch this interview with Marc Thompson. I watch a lot of interviews with different people here and there, different subjects and whatnot. And I really, to brag a little bit, I think we did a bang up job. I really did. Marc Thompson obviously did, getting to peel back the layers and the insight of not only what an actor does, but what a voice actor does. It goes down, as far as like what people do, actors and this stuff. So it's really fun to get the insight and to get the full value out of what we've done here. Pony up that $1 and take a look at this. And then, so that's thing one. The next thing you need to check out is the Twitter, Star Wars _ station. Carter is on there every day. We're scouring the net for all kinds of Star Wars insights. So, inject us into your veins. Check out that Twitter. Get the very first stuff that you can on Twitter at Star Wars _ station. Of course, our bread and butter and our flagship is past the podcast, right? Past the podcast is the Instagram StarWars.station. We both maintain that. Carter more than me, obviously, but the content on there. Oh my gosh, if you want to laugh a minute, just scroll through some of that old stuff. Carter does a fantastic job with that. We're also producing more and more YouTube content. Just search up Star Wars Station. I think it'll be towards the top on there. Obviously, if you scroll into that link tree and check that out, click on that. That'll be just fine. And then, every now and then we get on Twitch. There's a Harry Potter station out there if you like that. really kicking off videos is my Warhammer station. I've got an Instagram, but I'm mostly focused on YouTube content, and it's really growing on there. So if you like Warhammer, 10th edition just dropped. I played my first game today, and I've got a lot of insightful comments on that. That's going to be really fun that you can check out. And it's it's pretty much on everywhere. Same thing as Instagram. I don't have a Twitter yet, but I did make a Facebook page. I got a Facebook page on there for Warhammer Station. And gosh, what else is there? So what do we got next week, Carter? Indiana Jones. That movie comes out the day before your birthday, Dial of Destiny.
That's true. It comes out day before.
And so we're all going to gang up and go watch that. And that's this Friday. So go watch this movie. It's a Lucasfilm product. We're going to talk about that, right? We're going to have a special episode. Not special in the sense that it's a special, but special in the sense that we're not talking about Star Wars. Because it's a Lucasfilm product. We love Indiana Jones. We're both lamenting that we look silly in our in our fedoras. I want to find a fedora, but I think wearing cargo shorts and a fedora kind of wouldn't fit. But by gosh, I want to suck that up. If I can find one between now and then, I'm wearing that to the movie.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'll break my vow of silence just to talk about Indiana Jones, and everyone can tell my voice already sounds worse because I ran out of tea. So I'm really excited about doing Indiana Jones. This will be my third Indiana Jones themed birthday party.
Oh my
I'm 25.
Gosh. Hey, I don't care, man. I've had a Star Wars themed birthday party since in my late 30s.
I haven't had one yet. I've never had a Star Wars themed party, fun fact, which is crazy, crazy. And I've got this Star Wars podcast. I have no Indiana Jones podcast. I've had 3 Indy birthdays, but I am no less excited to see Dial of Destiny than I was on the eve of getting to see Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Really hoping I walk out in a completely different mood than I did the first time, but I am stoked to get to go to this movie. We're going to have a great time.
It's going to be a bang-up time. All of us at the movie, let's do a first reaction video. We'll just stand in front of the theater with our phone holding it up and post that later in the evening. But thank you for listening to our podcast. Patreon is where it's at if you want to see this interview. And oh my gosh, so much good stuff coming down the pipe, and all of our different stuff out there. And Carter, I'll leave it with your very final word of what you like to say. I'm not stealing your thunder.
Until next time, keep it wizard.